Welcome, everyone, to the Be Well Now podcast.
Thank you. Sit down. Sit down.
Yes. All right, you in the stand. We need a few volunteers. Okay, thank you. Come down. Yes, just two, please. Thank you.
I volunteer. I struggle with difficult emotions. I don't know what to do with them. And so I thought, can you talk to us about how we deal with difficult emotions?
I think discussing emotions is a great topic.
On this episode of
Be Well Now.
That was a little corny, the theme music.
Yeah, well, maybe.
The applause wasn't corny at all.
Yeah, the applause was great. I mean, of course, we always come in with that kind of applause.
We come in with that energy.
Oh, yeah. Bring the energy.
Like we're speaking to the masses, you know?
Well, you have to. Just envision it. Keep going.
We had dozens of downloads on our last podcast. This is so exciting. I am Nick. I am a patient of yours, Dr. Ron Dummar. We're here to help people live in the present, be well now.
Absolutely. And today we want to really focus in on a few tips that we can give you to help yourself when you find yourself in a difficult emotional situation. What it is, I want you to understand why you're in that situation, what you might be able to do at the moment, and then also what you can do later or in the future to try to mitigate or prevent that from happening again in the future.
Yeah, and so there's a couple things we can do when we face difficult emotions. We can face them or we can run away. And most people find it a lot easier to run away.
Oh, running is always the best answer, right?
Or numbing.
Everyone
I'm
wants
really
to
good
run.
at numbing, which is the same thing, I guess.
Run and numb. If you're numbing, you're probably not running. But it is the same, I'd say, principle or idea.
Run
right?
and numb.
You're probably not running very well if you're numb. But
you'd be surprised.
If you're running from an emotion, if you're fleeing from it, if you're avoiding the emotion, then it is definitely a trigger or it's something that is a significant issue for you that you need to move beyond. And go ahead.
Oh, you said if we're running from it, we're storing it.
Yes.
There's a paradox there. I mean, isn't it just already there? Can't we just run? Why can't we just run away and leave it there? Why is that paradoxically storing it?
It's so interesting because running is our physical manifestation of trying to get away from something. So we say, okay, if I just run, then I can separate myself from it. And the reality is you will for a time until the next opportunity in your life arises that is either the exact same situation or it's a new representation of the former situation. And so this is what happens. Let's say, for instance, I'm a young kid and I get bit by a dog. Okay? I get bit by a dog. Well, I develop a belief pattern about dogs. This actually happened to one of my sons. A dog bit him right in the cheek and caused a laceration on his cheek. So anyway, and we dealt with that. But if you get bit by a dog as a child, how does that affect you? How does that affect your psyche? How does that affect your mental state every time after that you see dogs? Well, this child, I had to work with him as well, but he got to a point where our backyard he didn't want to go into because occasionally there may be a dog that finds its way into, we had for a period of time an open backyard, and we were living with some land, and so you could have occasionally a dog that might go in there, and he was afraid. He became very fearful of any dog. And so stirring up this emotion in you repeatedly is going to create an opportunity for you to say, okay, how do I clear this, or how do I stand up to this, or how do I begin the opportunity to say, I need to advance past this, because certainly it's not serving me to carry this fear of dogs throughout my entire life.
So that's a great example. It's a metaphor, but it's also something I can think of, like have a car accident or have an incident in this location. You don't want to ever go there. And how broad could that be for life? There are some applications where it's like going outside, I could see all that. So let's get to that in a second. You can run, but you can't hide is what came to my mind too. So let's get to that in a second. But first, can we talk about let's say really difficult emotions come up in public. Can we give
Yes.
folks a few more tips and then dive deep into like what's happening and how we can address it at a more fundamental core level?
For sure. The number one thing for any situation, is to always have the rule of first, when you're feeling a significant emotion. And oftentimes these, for my patients, they'll come up in relationships, is where a lot of these emotions surface. And so I want you to really focus in on this principle. The idea is the place you have to come when you feel like you need to stand up for yourself, you feel like you need to do something, but your throat is swollen or shut, or your mouth, you can't speak, you feel restrained in your tongue. And this happens. But the point is, you have to first of all get yourself to a place of love. And we get ourselves wrapped up into a dysfunctional energy. The dysfunction happens and occurs and it affects us, and we allow ourselves to get wrapped up into that dysfunction. And then we perform from a state of dysfunction. So what we need to do first of all is always come with and from a place of love. So if you're going to say anything to a spouse, if you're going to say something, you think needs to be addressed, or to stand up for yourself in some way, or stand up for someone else that you feel like you need to stand up for, then it needs to come, first of all, from a place of love. If you want to have any effect in the universe.
I think it's the toughest thing, just to like love yourself.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I don't hate myself. I struggle loving myself.
Yeah.
Both are true at the same time. Like, I don't hate myself. That's not it. But like, am I worthy of anyone's love? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I worthy of whatever that? And it's just an interesting thing that we sometimes just struggle to love ourselves. So it's like, I don't know, Jordan Peterson in the 12 Rules of Life has something about like, treat yourself as if you were like your child, right? Sometimes we treat ourselves horribly, but like our child, we're going to make sure, hey, feeling good. Like, do you need some water? Make sure you get enough rest. Like, you will treat them in a way that like, you love them, you're taking care of whatever. We don't treat ourselves that way. So he's like, treat yourself as if you were taking care of a loved one, like a child.
Absolutely. That's great advice.
Yeah. So but it's easy to talk about and harder to implement. But yeah, like just loving yourself is hard. So when you come up with a tough emotion, is that how can we love ourselves?
Yeah. So first of all, that's going to be a practice. It's something we have to practice. And the only way to practice it is to spend time with yourself. And a lot of people are challenged spending time with themselves because there's a few reasons. One, they'll think that they're not being productive. And if I'm just here, meditating or pondering or thinking, then I'm not getting anything done, and so I'm unproductive. And then that only compounds the effort or the exercise. It makes it worse for them. So we have to really convince ourselves. We have to really come to a state of mind where we understand that and we've mentioned this on the podcast before, but we are the most valuable thing on earth. We are. I am the most valuable treasure on earth. And that's not to be said in a way of I'm better than anyone else, because you have to recognize you and then also simultaneously recognize that every single individual you come in contact with is also the most valuable thing on earth. And if you can start to recognize that within you and recognize that within everyone you engage with, then the level that you speak to them, the tone that you use to speak to them with, is going to totally change. There have been a lot of studies where they've analyzed people's tone of voice and their emotional state. And they've determined that people actually, and this is pretty obvious if you've listened to somebody, and you can hear when they get emotional and what happens to their voice, and you can hear if they're passionate, or you can hear if they're angry. But you know what happens to the voice? There's literally a physiological change because of this emotion that is moving through, this energy that's moving through the body. And so what we need to do is to capitalize on the emotion of love as frequently and as often as possible. And what that means is we need to love ourselves, and we need to love those around us. And the only way we can do that is to practice it. We have to practice it. And the more you practice it, the better you get at it.
It feels weird to even think about it like that. Anything spiritual or wellness, like, yeah, I got to practice. I got to work out and everything. But practicing, actually, I think practicing applies to everything in life.
Absolutely.
Like, you have to practice being good at a relationship every day.
You have to work at it.
Yeah.
Right? Practice.
Work or practice, I guess
Yeah.
those are conflating two terms, but
I like practice. And no, it is practice.
like life is just showing up every day and doing the work.
Yes. And work makes it sound like it's drudgery, but practicing makes it sound like something you want to get better at.
Yeah.
And so now put that into a relationship. Are we working at it, babe? Or are we practicing at it, honey?
That sounds weird, though, practicing at it.
It does. But
well, yeah,
are we practicing, right? And we're going to practice to get better.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're not going to work necessarily to get better.
That doesn't sound like a pleasant word, does it?
Yeah, it's like more effort.
You'd have to work on it, especially when it's broken. But practicing is something you do almost like functional medicine, where you hopefully do a little preventative practicing.
Absolutely. Well, and it's like as successful as you get, you can never stop practicing. You never stop practicing. You can stop working because, geez, there's too much effort there. I got to take a break. I need a weekend. But the practice is constant. The practice is continuous, and the practice is motivated with the intention of improving at a specifically focused area. Like I played a lot of piano growing up. And so
what age did you start?
When I was growing up.
What do you mean? 4 years old?
I started at 4 or 5. Yeah,
Okay.
my mom was really serious about
Were you like
piano.
ashamed of that? You dismissed it like, oh, when I was growing up.
I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Like,
I thought it was like, when people like who went to Harvard, and someone's like, where'd you go to school? Like, I went to college in Boston.
yeah.
Like, I thought it was like,
right.
I actually started when I was 1.
I went in New England.
Yeah. They're like humble, but like the paradox of that is anyway, it's a humble.
I didn't mean to do that.
I thought that's what you were saying. Like,
I didn't know. I don't know.
I was raised in a conservatory. Anyway, okay. So you played piano.
I'm the best. I draw the best lagers I know.
Don't know what that means.
Oh, so
I don't know what you're talking about.
oh, Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen Napoleon Dynamite?
I've heard of it. I know it's a big. It's
Some
a big
of
deal.
our viewers post in the comments if you've heard Napoleon Dynamite, if you've watched it.
I've watched it a while, but I knew it was like
Give us some good Napoleon Dynamite quotes.
a sensation, and also has some, ties to Utah and all those things.
Yes. Yeah.
I digress.
Yeah, well, that's okay. So here's the thing is you can run from those emotions. If we run from the emotions, then we actually hang on to them. And there's another interesting thing because people
We were doing the 3 tips.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Always come from love.
So always come from love was the first one.
Yeah, let's get back to you can't
Okay.
hide from it.
I was trying to move on and just get going to what I think is the juicy stuff.
Okay, but
you want
I'm
me
always,
to finish the 3 tips.
the 3
That's good.
tips. Yeah.
All right, tip number 2. Here's the key. Slow your breath. Now, this is one you can physically do at any given moment. You can initiate the change of your physiology instantaneously by simply slowing your breath. If you've ever spoken to anyone who is overly excited, anxious, upset, angry, their breath is not slow. Their breath is not slow. So make a point, if you're feeling nervous tensions build up inside of you, if you're feeling anger, if you're feeling anxiety, whatever you're experiencing, and if it's off-putting to you, then slow your breath. Now the third one, I wrote down, and I'm not going to share that one, I think. But the third one,
why?
I'm going to call it tapping instead. This is something you can also do. You can do tapping, or you can do an acupressure massage. So you can tap on the top of your head. Now, if you're in a situation and talking to somebody and someone's angry or it's triggering you, it might not be appropriate for you to start tapping the top of your head. Or it might lead to laughter. Who knows? You be the judge. Tapping is one thing that you can do that will instantly begin to release endorphins from your mind, from your brain, and help you to start calming down as well, and not be so uptight, and to help you process those difficult emotions. But in addition to that, let's say you're feeling like I can't do tapping. It's just not appropriate. What you can do is you can grab between the thumb and the first finger there, the first and second digit, and you can just massage that point. And you can be listening to this person, whatever they're saying, slowing your breath down and massaging that point, the muscle between the thumb and the first finger. And you can do it on both sides. And that sends a signal. It's actually an acupressure point. It's an acupuncture point called large intestine 4. And it sends a signal to your brain to begin to activate GI sensations. Well, the vagus nerve runs between our brain and our GI. It's one of the communication signaling centers. And this vagus nerve, when we can begin to calm that, which Li4 does, we can have improved digestion and improved metabolic function. And this metabolic function in GI and gut health, we know improves our mental clarity, our mental focus. So we'll be able to use more of the executive functioning portions of our brain, which is exactly what we want when we have a difficult emotional situation that we're dealing with.
So just a few things that you can do in the moment. Now, difficult emotions. You can run, but you can't hide. And when you run, you're actually storing the emotions.
Yes.
That's what I interrupted you earlier on.
Yeah, you're storing the emotions. And you're storing the emotions because essentially you're saying, I'm not ready to deal with them. Now, when we're kids, we run from a lot of emotions. We run from them because we're actually not aware of how to process them. So this is, for instance, there's a monster under my bed, right? And a parent will go into the child and help walk them through it and teach them, okay, this is how you clear this fear. This is what the parent's doing. You're teaching your child to deal with difficult emotions.
Like, let's look there.
Yeah.
And let's see, is it there?
Right. So
let's go.
Go down there. Get under. Look under the bed. Inspect it. Lay under the bed. Get a blanket. Rub their back. You know what I mean? Do things under the bed. Going there, creating a space of calm and peace and safety for them, and helping them to recognize, oh, even though I had this fear, there is not anything to fear. Or maybe there is something to fear, but that something to be feared, I am actually far stronger than. Or I am more capable than it is. I am more capable of overcoming it than it is of overcoming me. Okay? So really that's what we're trying to do, is to help ourselves and our bodies, and to help our children, you could say that was the analogy we just used, to begin to cope with these difficult emotions, to begin to process them, not just to store them and run away from them. Sometimes when couples first get married, they say, okay, well, their way of processing is to just ignore it and separate for a while. Until, you made me mad, boom, let's separate. Okay, well, that's fine, I guess, for that moment, until the next moment that your spouse does that thing that makes you angry again. And then what do you have to do? Boom, you have to separate again. And then you're teaching yourself to separate, to run, instead of saying, okay, this is bothering me. We need to talk about it. We need to hash this out. So let's have a discussion, right? Let's sit down and face this. So there's actually studies. It's a therapy, okay, that you can undergo, and it's called exposure therapy, which sounds pretty obvious, right? So the idea is to introduce yourself to a trigger or a fear or a troubling situation that you might fear, and to practice or set up a series of steps to getting to that fear in such a way that you will have built yourself enough to when you get to the ultimate fear, you're fortified enough and strong enough to combat it, right? And to confront it, I should say. And to confront it with resilience, not with turning your tail and running. So what we want to do ultimately is what has been recommended in a variety of texts for a long period of time. In fact, our entire medical paradigm is built on this idea. If you think of the staff, the medical staff, it has a snake on it, a serpent. Well, that seems fairly odd, but the idea is that serpent is something that harms. It can harm you, and it's something that is fearful for lots of people. But if you look to that serpent on the staff, the possibility exists that you could actually overcome that fear, right? That you could, by incrementally exposing yourself to that, you could build up yourself enough and fortify yourself enough to where when you actually have a more significant encroachment with it, that you'll be able to know what to do. And you'll be able to think properly because the fear of seeing it is gone. Like the surprise, the overwhelm, that happens. All of the things that occur when you jump into fight or flight and you lose your executive reasoning, because you've practiced that scenario, now that's gone. And you continue to remain in your fully functional executive functioning mind. This is the same thing for paramedics. I mean, imagine paramedics go through this kind of stuff a lot, where they go into difficult situations, pretty significant traumatizing type situations, but they have to really calm themselves so that they're not wrapped up in the trauma. They're expected to be somebody that is there to be a guiding force, right? A guiding light, somebody who can be a healing presence to just keep things calm and to properly direct what needs to happen. And so if that medical personnel were to lose it, right, or to have an overwhelming reaction and lose his executive functioning and reasoning, then it's not good for anybody. So in that same way, we need to be able to do that also. We need to be able to say, okay, we want to create scenario or situation by coming into contact with these difficult situations in ways that are manageable for us, and at times that are manageable for us. And so how and when do we do that? How and when do we do that? Meditation is actually one of these. You've been practicing a lot of meditation recently in a variety of different forms. You were telling me about visiting the Buddhist center.
Yeah, 2 Arrows Zen in Salt Lake. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
You walked in and you bow and you just sit on a cushion, and I didn't have 2 cushions. I had 1, which was a mistake because it was very uncomfortable. My knee started to hurt and my back was but for 30 minutes, it was very small room. You could feel the energy of the stillness. It was very different and interesting. It was interesting. And then it was just 30 minutes, boom, bell rings, some people stretched a little bit, bell rings a minute later, and you're just meditating again. And it wasn't so much the time for me because I've meditated a decent amount now, but it was sort of I guess sitting on a cushion. I'm used to doing the chair. My body was just felt uncomfortable. But the idea is to be there with that discomfort, right?
Yeah.
Treat it as a curiosity.
It's a new kind of experience,
It comes up. I was talking to one girl. I'm like, what do you do on these like week-long retreats? And she's like, pain. I mean, if you're in real pain, you can get up and obviously do what you need to do. But she treats it as a point of curiosity. Like, oh, interesting. And you just like send your awareness there, and sometimes it goes away. But I can tell you sometimes, I mean, horrible things happen to people, like, what do you mean introducing them in light doses? It sounds like torture to me.
Yeah.
Kind of circling back to you, like you mentioned.
Yes.
I mean, I guess that's why we do hard things like work out and take cold showers and
you're introducing yourself to something difficult that you want to fortify yourself against. Something that, lurks out there, right? But you need to be strong, and you can be strong. You can be fortified against something that you don't even know exactly what is out there. But if you're fortified in such a way, you just practice doing certain things like you're suggesting. But I like what you said about being aware of it, noticing it. Remind me the word you used exactly.
Like noticing pain, sending your awareness there.
She said
being
that
curious about it.
She's just curious. There you go. Yeah, just a curiosity, just observing it. So this is the first thing that you need to do. This is the absolute first thing you need to do. If you want to really address difficult emotions, the first thing you need to do is observe it.
Is there some wisdom in being still enough to just be with it and let the things come up?
Yeah, and just be like, okay,
scary,
what's happening here?
So what's coming up?
What's going on? What's happening?
It can be as simple as, my back feels a little sore today, or my knee doesn't like this, or I'm tired.
And you're acknowledging it.
Then you're like, well, where's that? What is that? What's the quality of that pain? Or I'm feeling sad, like,
Yeah, just observe it. See how it feels. Is there a smell? Is there a taste? Go through all your senses. Can you hear it? If you move slightly, does it change? Can you sit up? Can you adapt things at all? What if you take a breath? Is there anything that you can do that will adapt or change that emotion? So now that you're aware of that emotion, how does it feel? Where does it feel? And then
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you sound like a somatic experiencing practitioner I had, because you think it sounds like hypnosis to the outside world, where I'm like, yeah, I went in there and we talked for the first session, and the second session he kind of asked me to be curious about stuff, and then to be curious about that, and what does it really feel like, and then I would feel like a twitch in my shoulder. I had a bad skiing accident. Next thing you know, my arm's moving and my head's doing this, and it's just like I'm starting to convulse. And he was talking about how that's your body was storing that trauma, was processing it, but like it may be difficult for people sitting at home to know what to do with these things as they come up, right?
Right.
If you're really curious, and then you keep, but even hearing you was like you were like kind of a guided meditation. I was like, oh, be curious about that.
Where is it? Think about it. And then go through and analyze it in every certain way that you can. And then the other thing to recognize is that it's just there. It's just there. And then you can say, is this me? Or am I separate from this? If it is me, then maybe I can't separate from it. But if it's not me, can I move it? Can I pull it outside of me? Can I move it to a different place in me? And all of this is Qigong, right? This is Qigong. This is Tai Chi. This is the movement of energy within our bodies, pains, traumas, that get stored or lodged. So we store traumas, we store energy, you could say dysfunctional energy that we haven't resolved. It's stored in our body because we're either, one, not able to process it because we don't understand how as a child, right? Or we choose not to process it because we don't want to.
What about like a trauma, like a car crash?
Yeah, a physical trauma.
Yeah, physical
Absolutely.
trauma.
And so a physical trauma will obviously store in the body. I always like to say to my patients, the body keeps a journal, right? The body keeps a journal. And what that means is that you're going to have representations of certain things that happen to you in your life, attempt to store in your body in different regions. That's why therapy, that's why rehabilitation, that's why treatment is so important. It's so valuable because whether it's psychological therapy, whether it's talk therapy, whether it's mental health, counseling, or even if it's energy work, all of these therapies play a significant role in you being able to clear and release these emotions. Now, these emotions that we've talked about storing, again, we have something. When I get involved in a collision, you went there. When I get involved in a collision, first thing usually is my autonomic nervous system goes into fight or flight. My heart's usually pounding, and I'm not really aware of it. I'm amped up. I'm going over. I might even be shaking a little bit, right? And this is what happens to all of us when we're involved in a collision. It's a very nerve-wracking thing for us to go through. And sometimes we're stuck in fear. We don't know what to do. We can't move. We're completely frozen. And so what we need to be able to do is, as soon as possible, come back to an awareness. Think, okay. I saw this video yesterday. I was skiing yesterday. And I saw this video as well because, man, I really like skiing. And so I'll look at videos, too, of other people skiing and different things. It's like, come on, man. But that's where I am. I love to ski. And so this guy is going down, and he hits a tree. I'm like, oh, gosh, I don't like looking at that kind of stuff. Usually, I like looking at the really, really other successful things that work out. But, hey, that's the reality of our life, too. So he hits a tree, and I was like, oh, man, that was a pretty good hit. But then he falls to the ground. I was watching him, and he grabbed his leg. You could see him kind of wobble his skis, grabbed his chest and his arm, checked his neck, and moved himself around. And he goes, I'm clear. He yelled that. And I was like, how interesting is that? But he checked for awareness, right? He was checking his body. Now, I bet as well when he went home, he was having more awareness. His body was beginning to yell to him, hey, in certain areas. And that's what pain is. Pain is a signal to our body saying, hey, you need to address this because you haven't addressed it yet. Perhaps because you weren't aware enough to address it, but I'm making you aware of it now. You've ignored me long enough, and now it's time. That's what pain is, right? Or, hey, you need to address this because we had a more significant trauma, like an accident like that, okay? So that's what the body will do. Those pain signals are signals to us to be aware so that we can address a significant dysfunction so that we can improve our future state of living in this life. And so we have to look at it again from that same place of love. This is an opportunity. These emotions, these difficult emotions, are opportunities for you to get to a place of higher being. It's saying to you, just like pain is signaling to your body, hey, there's something wrong, we need to get rid of this. The limbic system in your brain is allowing an emotion to go from your subconscious, where it was stored as a trigger or as a previous trauma. It's wanting it to move into consciousness so that you can address it and clear it. Okay? So this emotion raises from basically a subconscious level. You're feeling it now. It's moving through the limbic system and the amygdala and in the brain, and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? What's happening? Why is my heart why am I having palpitations? Why is it affecting my breath? It's difficult to breathe. Oh, I need to take deeper breaths, right? What's going on? And what body system is it moving through in my body? All of these things we need to take stake of and really just be aware of it. Just be aware of it and watch it. And then say to it as well, you can say to it, hey, you're welcome to stay here, and you're also welcome to go. I'm not sure you're serving me anymore, so I'm inviting you to go. You can come back if you need to warn me of something else, but at this time I invite you to go. And then take 5 deep breaths in and out and let it pass. Now, it's not likely that with the first time of trying to clear an emotion that it's going to be gone for life and you never have that emotion again. But by practicing clearing these difficult emotions, by practicing becoming more stable and more consistently in our executive mind, we're going to be able to get to a place where each of the situations that we deal with, the difficult emotion situations, difficult conversations that we need to have with people, are going to go a whole lot better. And our voice as well, because we're not wrapped up in all of our subconscious traumas, and we're not taking that to the table when we're having a discussion with somebody, we're actually using more of our consciousness, and we're speaking from a place of consciousness and a place of love. And I say that because what you have to understand is we're constantly speaking. When we speak and I talk to you, I speak from my consciousness, those things that I know, and the knowing that I have. And I also say things from my consciousness. But the emotions, these traumas are actually at the subconscious level. And what we communicate to people is actually the conscious and subconscious combined. So if you feel like you say one thing to somebody and they got something different, it's possible that there's a disconnect between the conscious and the subconscious. Okay? You can have an example of this when I see these political things that go on, like debates and different things like this, or interviews with people. They'll often bring in this specialist that does body language. And then they'll break down their little movements, their eye twitch, or the way that they're, using their lip, or, their hand moving, or the way they shift in their chair or move their legs. All of those things now are giving cues to this body language expert as to what's truly being communicated, right? About what's real or what's behind what's being said. And this is why in relationships too, people feel like things are said sometimes, but it's not fully communicated. What's said is different than what's communicated. And when there's a difference or a dysfunction or a disconnect between what is said and what is communicated, then we have work to do, because we need to bring we need to bring those traumas, we need to bring that emotional level of the subconscious into consciousness so we can be aware of it and then forgive it and let it go and act in a space of love with ourselves and with others. And as we do that, ultimately, we're going to be able to handle difficult situations and difficult emotions with much greater ease.
I'm curious what role plant medicine plays and if it can make a difference. And if I'm not mistaken, that's for next week's episode of the Be Well Now podcast.
That was a great plug right there. Absolutely. So plant medicine, we prepare a lot of our patients and have prepared a lot of our patients for plant medicine ritual experiences. And we actually do a medicinal ritual experience in our office as well. And what these rituals do is they help patients to break through barriers of trauma, to confront these difficulties in a way where they're supported. They have a group of support with them, and through a ritual or a method that takes them through that process of basically overcoming or moving through these emotions and into a space of love.
We're going to talk about that. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm
for
looking
next
forward
week.
to it.
And I mean, what a great episode this was. We can't solve it all for folks, but we can give them a blueprint. Thank you for doing that. I mean, the hard work comes after this podcast, right? The doing and the practice
Yes.
and the seeking out a therapist or treatment or whatever you mentioned. It's, you got to start somewhere. It can be very complicated, but there's no such thing as a plug and play, one pill, one treatment. I mean, we're in this life, and it's about practicing the right things to do.
Well, and the thing to keep in mind too is that the greatest days are ahead. And the more that we bring our emotions to the fore, the more aware we become, the more we embrace with love, the more we encourage love, and the more we take love as our guide, the more we create those great days ahead.
Amen to that.
Amen.
And namaste.
Namaste.